What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. We are going to be talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she just visited San Francisco a couple days ago. We got some really solid footage of the event, and we are going to be talking about her, playing the footage, talking about her thoughts, her ideas, and how we can just enrich humanity together. For those that don't know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's currently 28 years old. She's a politician, educator, organizer, political activist. On June 26th of this year, she won the Democratic primary in New York's 14th congressional district, defeating an incumbent. His name was Joe Crowley, in what was described as the biggest upset victory in the 2018 midterm election season. And she's also a member of Democratic Socialists of America and has been endorsed by various political progressive organizations and individuals. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start playing the video from her in San Francisco. We're going to pause throughout and we're going to talk about what we learn and unpack it in further detail. Let's do it. This is a pretty big audience, a couple hundred people. And Jane Kim from San Francisco, who's on the Board of Supervisors, introduced Alexandria. Turn it up just a little for me, on.
And this is about movement, because what that is going to take is a movement. Yes. And I'm just so excited and honored and thrilled and humbled to be joining you all in movement today. Thank you. Because that is what it's going to take. It takes convening on a regular basis and making sure that we are reminded as to the importance of the work that we are here to commit today. So thank you all so much. And give yourselves a round of applause. People just like want to take selfies with me. I'm like, what is going on?
So there's a couple things to unpack here that I think are really important. The first thing to unpack is that it's very interesting that the way that she's describing what's going on to her right now. So it shouldn't be low. The way that she's describing what's going on with her. Can you hear me better now? Okay. Okay. Well, this is important stuff. So stay with us here. All right. So the way that she's describing what's going on with her right now is really important because we don't typically think about what it's like to go from bartending a couple months ago to being a political activist that fills a theater across the country. So, and at a young age, at 28. So she's walking us through a very kind of like emotional experience of what that's actually like, and there's no way to really prepare for that when you wake up in the morning, CNN's writing about you, and you're like, whoa, like I don't know what to do, this is crazy stuff, I need to figure out how to best handle this. Totally real and raw and interesting in that sense. Now, just something from my perspective here is that the stories about being at the shoe store and the person going like, oh my God, it's you and stuff. These are fine stories to tell, this person saying, oh, you're Puerto Rican, etc. Like these are fine, but these precious minutes, I mean, you only have minutes on stage here in San Francisco. We want to know how you're going to pay for everything that you want to pay for. That's the truth. This is why I think that having a moderator or an interlocutor on stage with her that can at least press in the sense of being like, okay, Alexandria, you have this policy, you want healthcare for people. How do we pay for healthcare for people? Does that come out of the military budget? Where does it come out of? And how do you teach people that it's totally fine that we decrease military budget in favor of healthcare and all these different sort of ways of understanding? If you want to pay for basic community college for people, how are you going to pay for the basic community college? So this is just a blanket statement around the precious time that you have on stage and just being pressed. If you want to lead and be a leader in the sense of being able to pull people from all these different walks of life for them to understand, then you have to be more nuanced. You have to be willing. The emotional stories are important, but also the story about how you're actually going to pay for the things that you're promising. This is kind of what I'm going to talk a little bit about, the idea of a monoculture and the identity politics here. But especially with monocultures, this exact same thing is happening somewhere in Nebraska where it's only a bunch of conservatives, and that it's just a monoculture of conservatives as well. And if there was somebody on stage to press the conservative a bit more in the liberal or socialist sort of tendencies, then it would be a better event in Nebraska as well. So I'm just saying here, it would be a better event if there was somebody on stage to press her a tiny bit in how would you pay for these things. So that's what I think is dangerous about monocultures. And there was definitely a monoculture here, and you'll see that a little bit more in the video as we go, but these are just some initial thoughts. Let's go ahead and play again. This is an important moment. All right, go ahead and pause, Ronnie. All right, so as you guys heard there was a chant that was going on. From Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go. And this is very interesting because there is well, first of all, it's the first time I've ever heard that chant. The second thing is that, and probably many of us haven't heard that chant before, but from a perspective of you look at the Earth from the moon and you don't see any borders, you see all all the 100 billion people that have ever lived and died have lived and died right there on the pale blue rock, and that it's really important to figure out how to work together. And so these so-called massive walls and these military systems that protect these walls, national boundaries, are definitely some things that are probably going to slowly dissipate over time as we globalize. And this is an important point. But at the same time, we have to realize that this is not something that can just dissipate tomorrow. You can't just tear down the walls across borders tomorrow and let the free flow of people go. It's not, that's because there's going to be a lot of chaos that occurs from doing that. So I just want to be clear here right now, instead of saying something along the lines of, yeah, that's so true that all the walls have got to go. There could be this so much nuance that's brought forward and educated onto people about how, yeah, in the short term, let's figure out how to best work together across borders, and then over time, as we globalize and work together as a planet, we will slowly dissipate these walls. So there's got to be more nuance here. Anyway, let's go back to the video.
And so I think that even in that opportunity, I think it's important that like you can have that conversation as well. It's important, and I just without like whoa. No, I think it is important to have that conversation. I know I'll just go on a brief thing.
I wish we could have had the conversation right then and there. She's saying it's important to have it, but why didn't we have it right then and there?
Has no civic representation, that is legislated into second-class citizenship.
This is why monologues are more dangerous than when you can have an interlocutor there.
As a Puerto Rican woman, I know that not having full civic personhood results in humanitarian crises, and it results in a lack of freedom. I'm thankful to communities that are helping guide me and educate me as I see myself and others. And I appreciate those who do not stop in their advocacy to make sure that the most marginalized are heard. So thank you. And that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. Because in a system where people are paid less than living wages, in a system where people are burdened with unconscionable levels of debt, in a system where rising costs of housing basically equal an opportunity to transfer wealth to those who already have too much, we are convinced that we are more marginalized and alone than we are. We are shamed into saying, we're shamed into not talking about having $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 student loan debt. Yes. We are shamed into saying we can barely afford our rent at the end of the month. We are shamed into saying that we don't have health insurance because we can't afford it. And that shame, that lack of talking about it, contributes to the lack of power. So
let's give it a quick pause. Okay, this pause is really quick because this is, I think, one of the reasons why she's resonating a lot with lots of Democrats and socialists, is because it is absolutely absurd that people are getting paid so little, and we've seen so many videos circulating across employees of Amazon, employees of Microsoft, employees, of Walmart, employees for different, especially massive retail chains and whatnot, that are just getting paid very, very little money, and barely enough money that they can only live in their car, that they can't pay their rent, that they can't have health care, like she said, and that this is one of the things that really resonates with people. And this is something that really resonates with me as well, is I do think that it unlocks human creativity when people don't have to be scavengers for the bare minimum jobs and that aren't meaningful to them, and that they can't take care of their health as well, all this different kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the reasons why she's really kind of making a tight grab onto people's hearts. And also that this whole idea of these like racing for trillion-dollar companies, the idea that we're racing for trillion-dollar companies, meanwhile this so-called we care so much about our fellow sisters and brothers, but we don't at the same time when we're not respecting the fact that the employees that are working in Amazon distribution centers are struggling to pay for their rent, so and they have to live in their car. So let's just really unpack that conversation in all of its nuance. Like, go for the trillion-dollar companies, but also figure out how to properly take care of people, and then we'll tackle egregious student debt. We don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt anymore. We got to figure this out. There's a better way to do this. So let's go ahead and play the video again.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Yep.
Because way too many Americans make less than $30,000, $40,000 a year. Way too many. And in the wealthiest society in the history of humanity, we can have good things. Work. It takes work. What we did in New Year 14, we had a community that is 70% people of color, that is half immigrant, that is overwhelmingly working class, that never had a person of color represent them in American history. I wish I could clap and be like, woo, we did it. But I was like, that's And, but it's because these vestiges of power, concentrations of wealth, three generation political machines are perpetuating injustice. And we need to be really honest with ourselves and realize that injustice is not a partisan issue. Injustice exists everywhere.
Yeah, injustice is a humanitarian issue, not a partisan one. Yeah.
primary midterm elections. And when they told me that, they said literally, quote, everyone else is a waste of time. What I heard was people of color are a waste of time. That's what they were saying. They're saying people who work 2 jobs are a waste of time. They're saying people that couldn't afford to go to college are a waste of time. And I'm here to say that is not true.
Yeah, let's pause it quick. So this idea that people need to vote. You know, Bernie Sanders said it, that voting's not a spectator sport. Participating in politics is not a spectator sport. It's something that you need to go and educate yourself about and then participate in the election. And if somebody needs to light a little fire under your ass or a big fire under your ass, so you go and you read about different candidates and you read about what they care, what they're representing you to do, then you need, then sure, then this is correct. That if people are not going and voting because nobody's knocked on their door and told them, hey, this is how you learn about politics and this is how you vote in elections, then we need to go and knock on those people's doors that are in cases privilege of people of color, people that are black or Hispanic, or what from wherever they are, and even white people that also are not participating in voting that maybe have progressive belief sets or that might have conservative, maybe some black or Hispanic have conservative belief sets. Really, it doesn't really matter at this point. It's more about actually activating and unlocking people's attention to be focused more on reading and learning and then making decisions about how their government and country operates on a small scale and a larger scale and then the largest federal scale as well. I mean, this is not a spectator sport. This is something that everybody needs to be doing, and no more suppression. No more suppression. It's time to unlock everyone's creative ability. We're good. Play band.
Voter.
Pause it, please. Okay, we had a couple things there. Again, as an interlocutor, someone's got to push back a little bit. How do you structure a federal jobs guarantee? What does that look like? How do you pay for healthcare for everybody? What does that look like? How do you pay for universal basic income for people? What does that look like? How do you pay for education for people? What does that look like in all of its nuance? In all of its nuance about how you pay for it, how it gets distributed to people, how does this affect the economy? How does this affect the basic person that is receiving these goods? All of this has to be unpacked. And it's just not being unpacked here in these monologues. And it's too bad that people that are also in the audience in this case, just like they would be in Nebraska, are just listening to the monologue and going, yes, 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 but then we got to talk about the nuance of how it actually happens. And this is why it's important to have an interlocutor here. All right, go ahead and play again.
We gotta knock on every damn door, as my neighbor Abuelito said. We have to knock on every damn door. We need to call every phone. We need to be writing postcards, and we need to be doing it up and down the ballot. And we are going to keep that pressure on until we win. People have misunderstanding, and they feel like it's zero sum. It's win or lose. And that if you lost, it wasn't worth doing it at all. We know that's not true.
We're going to grill the pie.
Movement is about advancing the front line everywhere. You lose by a little bit, you raise our organizing, you lose by a little bit, that next cycle, it's ours.
Yeah, you got to keep hustling. You got to keep taking the risks. We know this on the program. We don't just fall down and stay down and get back up.
And I'm not going
and now give it a quick pause round. Two things there. Again, saving the planet. Okay, we know a lot of Democrats and socialists are going to rally together to talk about saving the planet. And we know about how important it is to sustain Earth over long periods of time. How do we do that? How do you plan to save the Earth? Again, unpack the nuance here. What are you going to do as we burn all of this energy every single day as the United States? Only 5% of the population on planet, but 25% of the energy consumption on the planet. So how exactly are we going to do that as we transition to renewables over time? And then the other thing is immigration. You know, we solve healthcare, we create healthcare, we create immigration. Okay, what are you going to do about immigration? How do we figure out how to properly bring in people from that come into the United States as immigrants and properly screen them to make sure that everything's okay with them in terms of their previous record, if they're a felon or not, and also if they have proper mental stability or not, all this type of stuff. So how do we figure out how to properly do that? And this all needs to be unpacked in all of its nuance, and it's not just a binary thought process. Go ahead and play again.
You all know that that's what we have to support. And what we need to do as progressive candidates is end the transactional culture of money and politics. It's not you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Pardon? Okay. It's not you scratch my back, I scratch yours. We need to say, hey, you need help, I'm gonna give it. That's what it is. No. Endless transaction. If this is movement, if we have the same shared goals, we're gonna help. That's why I went to Kansas. That's why I went to Wichita. That's why we go to Kansas City and St. Louis. Because when they tell me that this doesn't work in the Midwest, they can't trick us. The Bronx ain't that different from Detroit. It's not that different from Virginia. It's not that different from St. Louis.
Wait, pause it. So just quick thought here is that there's two things here. It's that she's right about it can't just be scratch back, and that's the only way to do things. It's that if you actually see somebody that is literally hurting, that we got to figure out how to help that is a human being, that is a collective system of people and stuff. And so we got to figure out how to do that and maximize the potential so they can get on their own feet and also flourish, etc. And then without expecting something in return, although we know that as they creatively flourish, that the whole we'll all prosper in that sense. And then this other thought, it's actually true that these places are different from each other. Bronx is a lot different from Birmingham in many ways, and Detroit and St. Louis in many ways. Just like San Francisco is a 99% liberal monoculture, and that is much different than Lincoln, Nebraska is, and Birmingham, Alabama. These are just facts. So even though humans are generally the same cognitive biological creatures, they do latch on to biases assorted with different thought processes and political parties, which then further bias them in these monocultures. So in order to actually unpack the nuance, we got to be talking about all of the variables on all of these issues in depth. And so they are similar, but also very different in many ways. And so again, it's about the nuance, not about the binary. Let's play again.
We are going to champion the needs of working class Americans. And once that happens, we're taking it to start early. Because when we expand the electorate, we can't wait until 2 months before an election. We have to be doing this work constantly, and we support each other constantly. Thank you all so very much.
All right, so that's the extent of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez visiting San Francisco and giving her talk, and the extent of, our thoughts on her talk. Again, just some of the ideas about, expanding the electorate, getting people out to vote that are typically not voting, that are not educating, that previously weren't educating themselves, but now we are figuring out how to educate them and get out to go vote on these topics and expanding that. That's great. We need to get more people out and educated and voting on these topics. Also, we need to figure out how to properly maximize and unlock the human creativity potential that exists within people that are currently stressed out, working at jobs they don't love, working 2 jobs, that they have $100,000 in debt, that they don't have basic health care, that they can't access collegiate level things, that these things need to be unlocked and created somehow in the world. But we have to unpack the nuance about how to save the planet, provide health care, drop the borders. We have to talk about the short term, the long term. We have to talk about all the nuance in between. That's why, remember, interlocutors that are polymathic, that are equanimous, that are multidisciplinary, that are good active listeners, paraphrasers, all of this is so important at these events, whether it's the monoculture here in the Bay Area at this event and Democratic Socialist perspective, or the monoculture in Nebraska where it's a bunch of conservatives also gathering together. So remember, interlocutors are crucial, moderators, people to have all this nuance around the discourse. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. If you guys had a good time, subscribe, comment below. We'd love to hear from you, build this community. Join us on Patreon so we can continue going to great places like this and capturing the content and talking about it and enriching us to move forward collectively and figure out all of this great content. Thanks to Ron, our producer and director. Much love, everyone. Peace.